Hi, I'm Brett Johnson, former United States Most Wanted cybercriminal, now good guy, and host of The Brett Johnson Show. Today's episode is episode number 90. We're bringing on George Perera. George works for the Miami-Dade Police Department. He's a commander. He works in the major cybercrimes unit. And let me tell you, George has been there. Well, basically, George has been there forever, and he is outstanding. He has an understanding of what criminals do, why they do it, how to catch them, how to put them in prison for a long time. He knows every single thing that someone on the good guy side of the fence that combats cyber criminals every single day should know. He is outstanding. He was kind enough to sit down with me on the Brett Johnson Show, and we basically shoot the shit for a while. And let me say, the opinions of George and what he talks about are strictly George's opinions. They are not those of the Miami-Dade Police Department. George was very adamant about that, so I wanted to mention that before we go into the show. Hey, if you guys don't mind, before we start, why don't you take a minute and press that little subscribe button that's there? I would appreciate it. I'm looking to build my subscriber base. So take a minute. If you like the show, subscribe. If you don't like the show, subscribe. Then bitch about it in the comment section, and we'll take it from there. Without further ado, I am absolutely thrilled, pleased, and humbled to have George Perera on the Brett Johnson Show. Are you where are you? Miami?
I am in Miami.
You've heard my story, right, about Miami or not?
No.
Okay, so my dad,
Mm-hmm.
no better way to start the show than with this story, I guess. I'd been saying in my presentations that I was 10. Turns out I was 12 when my dad, he was watching a 60-minute segment. We were in Panama. We were in Hazard, Kentucky. He was watching a 60-minute segment. The segment was talking about all the drug trafficking in Miami, and it was showing the pallets of cash, the tables of cocaine, all that stuff. So he's locked onto it. He gets through watching the 20-minute segment, looks over at my mom. I think I need to go down to Miami and be a cop. And my mom's like, I think you do. And the whole plan was for him to become a police officer, get down there, happen upon a drug deal, keep the cash. He'd keep the cash. They'd keep the drugs, and everybody be happy. And I kept thinking, hell, they're just going to shoot your ass is what they're going to do. So based on that, no kidding, George, based on that, they rounded up about $6,000 cash, sold what they could in the house, rented a U-Haul truck, and headed south on I-75. And we got there. Wow. There were some riots when we got there. That was 1982. Riots when we got there. And we ended up staying at a Days Inn that was right across from this bridge where all these homeless people were. So I was scaring my mom to death. My dad, he goes to cop school day one, comes back. I think it's going to work. A couple of days later, he comes in. We can't stay. And what had happened was the Miami-Dade cops had burst in, had arrested, 5 or 6 people that had outstanding warrants that evidently had the exact same idea that he had. So they load back up north on I-75. No idea where they were going to go until they both remembered that they had spent spring break in Panama City, Florida. And that's how we ended up in PCB right there. That's a true story right there, man. That's Brett Johnson's life right there.
That's crazy, bro.
Yeah. So George Perera. George Perera. 25 years as a cybercrime investigator?
Well, I have 35 years with the department.
Okay.
I've been in technology in one facet or another for the department for probably close to 25 years.
Right.
And that's been multiple different stops along the way. Our IT section, our 911 center,
right.
And then ultimately, I created now this capacity within the department for our cyber crimes.
Outstanding. Let me ask you this, and I want to go into some biography with you too, but how have you seen cybercrime change over that 25-year span?
Well, I mean, initially there was nothing. There was no. I mean, there was in the early days. When I say the early days, we're going back into the 90s for me. You had a couple of clowns that were playing around, and they were writing viruses and things, but that was
Right.
more for fun and laughs. It wasn't for anything other than that, and that kind of spawned the antivirus industry because people didn't want to be, I guess, they didn't want their computers or their networks to be compromised at someone's expense, for fun,
Right.
because that's impactful to their operations, etc. Um, that was the initial things, and then you had the beginnings of some e-commerce, with probably in the latter 90s is when you had that transition and you started to see some people doing transactions online,
Right.
and I think that began you began to see more criminal activity because people saw the opportunity to be able to look at a new emerging area and take advantage of that, and clearly that's occurred, and it's been evolving. That whole thing has been a continuous evolutionary process
Right.
since then, as you well know.
Yeah, I have some knowledge of that, as you know. Um, so people know how I got involved with this. Lord knows I've talked about it a lot. But how did you come upon a career trying to stop people like I used to be?
Well, like I outlined earlier, I had been in various facets of police technology, from networking to 911 telephony to the gamut of everything we had, supporting our mobile data terminals, all of that kind of stuff. So I kind of got in that through more of a security type of a role, kind of overseeing that aspect of things, and learning about that, and that kind of it kind of transitioned into this kind of a role.
Right.
My organization has always had some presence in cyber, but it was more like digital forensics and internet crimes against children, which is really the backbone of most law enforcement cyber that's out there for the most part. But I saw this stuff, and that was kind of on the horizon, and we started discussing that internally with the big bosses, and talking about what trying to because they always try to position themselves to try to be on top of whatever the next threat is,
Right.
and a decision was made by the big bosses that we were going to pursue this line, and they told me to figure that out and set it up, and that's kind of how I got into it.
Let me ask you on that. I was the criminal, and now that I've transitioned to the good guy side, one of the things that I have seen is that sometimes it takes some convincing to sway someone to enact proper security or to target a specific type of area of crime or fraud, things like that. Was that a situation when you were trying to explain to the higher ups that, hey, this is a problem that's coming, or not?
Well, first of all, I want to preface, our entire conversation here by saying that, these are the words and opinions of George Perera and
Absolutely.
not of the Miami-Dade Police Department. So it was not for my boss, who's the director now. I didn't. It wasn't a big convincing job for him. No, not
Okay.
at all. He he was pretty up on technology. We had talks about different topics in crime and technology. I currently and have in the past sat on multiple boards and committees throughout the United States at all different levels regarding technology, police technology, and cybercrime.
Right.
Um, so it was not a hard sell for my guys, not at all, not my team here. They saw the line,
Right.
we
Right.
very very clearly. So it
No,
was not
I
difficult.
appreciate that. I do, because I've seen agencies that were outstanding, and I've seen agencies that were just kind of overwhelmed. And I'm glad to see that you were, in one that was on point. And hats off to Miami-Dade. I mean, they do a fantastic job with every single thing they do. They really do. I do want to talk about George a little bit.
Sure.
So where'd you grow up? In Miami or not?
No, sir. I originally from Maine.
From Maine.
Maine, yes,
So you
sir.
migrated south for the weather, or what?
No, my dad got a job transfer down here,
Okay.
and so we moved down here when I was in ninth grade.
All right.
And finished high school here, went in the military, got out of the military, got hired by the department, and pretty
What
much the
branch of the
rest is
military
history.
did you go into?
I was in the Army,
How many years?
3 years, MP.
I have much respect for the service. My dad was a captain in the Army, helicopter pilot,
Wow.
until, well, he got
Okay.
booted out. What? Not booted out. They downsized and they gave him the opportunity. They were like, "Hey, you can stay in, but we're going to boot you down to a staff sergeant, or you can get out." And at that point in time, the coal business was booming, so he was like, "I'll go be a coal miner," and that just spiraled down from there. So
Wow.
now, what'd you go to college for?
Well, I was working. I decided that higher education was a good thing.
Yeah.
So I working full time. I went to college part time, and I got my undergraduate degree, and then moved on to my first master's, which was in public administration,
Sweet.
and I got a graduate certificate in emergency management. And then I got my second master's from the Naval Postgraduate School in security studies, where I focused on cybersecurity.
That's pretty damn impressive. Now, did you always want to go into some sort of law enforcement or public service, or not?
I did. When I was I was a scout, Boy Scout, my up entire from when I was small. Started in Cub Scouts and went through the whole thing, and finished as an Eagle Scout and Boy Scouts, and then from there I transitioned into Explorers, the Police Explorer program. And so I knew I wanted to be in law enforcement. But when I was in high school as a police explorer, I was like, you know, uh, Miami-Dade was hiring you at 19, but I'm thinking myself, boy, that's young. I didn't know that. I didn't think that was. I thought I was a little bit young for working the streets in Miami at the
Sure.
time. So I opted to go in the military. I figured I'd go in the military, get the GI Bill, and also get some experience. So I went in the military as an MP.
Nice, nice. So, military MP, what are you dealing with mostly there?
Well, that kind of stuff primarily is a lot of silliness with soldiers. They go out. They get. Back then, we were paid once a month.
Right.
So when you were paid once a month, a lot of guys, especially single guys, get their whole paycheck, cash their whole paycheck, and then they go and raise some cane. And so that was a lot of what we had to deal with. But
Right.
we also had to deal with normal kind of stuff that you would as a cop, domestic disputes, those kinds of things. Not generally any serious types of
Okay.
crimes.
Do you enjoy that kind of work, being an MP, or not?
Oh yeah, it was fun. Yeah, we had a lot of fun.
All right.
Got to
So,
see other parts of the world, so it was good.
where all did you travel to?
Um, I was in Germany, so that was a
I
nice.
was. We lived in Swabish Hall for 3 years. That's where we
Wow.
live.
So I was in Bad Kreuznach, which is southeast of Frankfurt, probably about 90 minutes.
I
So
got you. I got you. All right. So you had your fill of schnitzel, I'm sure.
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I still love that stuff. Can't get it
Me
here
too.
like that at all.
No, sir.
But
No,
all
sir.
right. So you were there, then you came back and you went straight into police or not?
Yes, I put my application into to Miami-Dade, and I put my application into Florida Highway Patrol.
Nice. Nice. And you got picked up with Miami-Dade then.
No, I got picked up first by Highway Patrol, but when I went down to to continue in the process there, they told me what the starting salary was, and I said, I can't do that. So
I mean, I got to eat.
right, $13,500.
Now, what year was that?
That was 1988, 89.
13.5, 88, 89. Good
Yeah,
Lord,
and
man.
and Miami-Dade was about 30.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Yeah. You've got to
So it
go
was
lower.
not even. Yeah, it was not even. You can't. And their big selling point was that they had a take-home car, but I said, take-home car doesn't offset that much difference. And
Well, I tell you what I'm wondering, and I've been wondering this for a while. I'm the guy that I'm constantly reflecting on who I am, who I've been, where things are going, things like that. And one of the questions that I've had, and I kind of know the answer. At least with me, I kind of know the answer. But I'm wondering what causes someone like me to engage in crime, and someone like you to go on the good guy side and engage in public service. Let's be honest. You could have gotten a degree making umpteen dollars, but you chose a field of public service, of serving your fellow man, doing the right damn thing every single day. I did not. It took me a long time to come to that, and I'm wondering what. Do you have any ideas about what separates the two? What causes one person to go into one and not?
if I had that answer, I think that I'd be more than making more than the teams there. I would that's a magic bullet, if you will.
Yeah.
I've wondered about that kind of thing many times, because I have seen many a cop kid that walked the wrong path,
Right.
and know the parents personally, and know that they're good. I know that that they did everything that they could do to try to make sure the kid did the right thing, made the right choices, all that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot of different factors that are involved there, and I think some of them may even be personality and things that are hard coded in us, if you
Right.
will, and and some of those things are just they some, and how strong that they are within that person, because some of them might be able to you might be able to rehabilitate somebody,
Right.
but there's folks, as well as I, that you can't be rehabilitated.
No, there. I mean, I was, and to be fair with you, it took me several attempts. I mean, I was given opportunity after opportunity after opportunity, and it finally caught on. But I mean, I've seen people that it doesn't matter how many attempts you give them, how much you want to, try to get them on the straight path or anything else. It's just not going to work out like that.
100%.
It's and that's something I've been worried. I've been thinking about that a lot, George. I mean, I really have. My sister, she had the same upbringing that I did. She engages in shoplifting at a very early age, but other than that, she's a teacher, a good citizen, good parent. She's got anger issues, but nothing illegal for the woman.
Mm-hmm.
Me, I mean, I was not that kid. I was a kid that grew up hands on with it, and I spent a lot of time thinking about what what separated the two of us. And I think I know. I mean, at one point, I did a podcast with Denise, and she said that she always thought that someone was going to come and save us. And I told her I knew that no one ever would. And I think that's what really caused, looking back at my life, I think that's what caused that divergence of paths at that point. And of course, when I became an adult, I was already well versed, and I just chose that field of crime. But it nags at me. Like you said, you've seen children of law enforcement, good people, that went down that bad path. And it can't be all just upbringing. It can't be all biology. I mean, there's got to be something else that is causing that switch to get thrown like that. I just can't ping it, and I keep trying to figure it out.
That's a tough one for sure. I mean, like I said, I've thought about that, quite a bit. I mean, and I can't I've been able to figure that one out either.
So I did a podcast a few weeks ago, a psychology podcast, and the whole show was about, what kind of stress did I go through when I was a criminal. And let me tell you, it was high. And I'm wondering how stressful a job in law enforcement is.
Well, it can be pretty stressful at some times. I mean, I think that law enforcement creates a lot of its own stressors.
Right.
I think all jobs do. We have our own internal stressors that we put on ourselves, our bosses. I think that government as a whole has a lot of bureaucracy, which adds another layer in there as well. I think that well, the obvious thing is that the job that we do, the only thing that's the same every single day is taking that key out, putting it in the ignition of that car, and turning it. At that point in time, anything could and possibly will happen.
Right.
Fortunately, for the most part, I can say that the times of any type of substantial conflict are far and few between. But when those happen, that's the epitome of stress.
Right.
But day to day, I can say that law enforcement is a pretty stressful. At some point in time during any given day, you're going to be stressed at work for something. Something's gonna happen. And when I say that, I'm not saying, oh, your boss is going to get on you because you forgot some paperwork or you missed court or something. I'm talking about a call that you're dealing with, some kind of an incident or event or something is going to happen, and it's going to cause stress for you. I mean, it is not an unknown that law enforcement has, as a rule, super high divorce rate, probably the number one. It has super high cardiac related deaths and cardiac related issues. So those kinds, to the point where they have we have heart bills and things like that to try to help us
Right.
deal with the all of those types of things. So the stressors in law enforcement are many, and even at my level, they're still they're still there. I'm dealing with problems differently, even problems on the road or problems that my folks during an investigation or something are getting involved with, but nonetheless, I'm looking at them more globally and having to marshal multiple resources to respond to an issue or event. So my type of stress is more brought on by myself, trying to manage and resolve something safely, quickly, with minimum bad stuff happening, all that kind of thing. I'm not on the street anymore, fortunately, that I've got to make snap decisions and deal with that kind of thing.
Let me ask, why do you think the divorce rate is so high?
Well, I think that as a rule, cops law enforcement as a rule are a lot of them are narcissists, I think that they,
A lot of bad guys are too.
well, I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. That, so that, is not a good thing for, for relationships. I think that, we have to, depending upon our job, sometimes we have to pretend to be bad guys and do undercover work and that kind of thing, and
Right.
can't provide information necessarily to the spouse that the spouse might want to know. We have problems with having to up and leave, at different times. I mean,
Right.
you get called out in the middle of the night. You get called out on Christmas and have to leave. I mean, I can't tell you how many times over the years that I've had those kinds of situations. Sitting down for Thanksgiving dinner, and then I got to go. Um, so all of those factors, I think, contribute to, to that kind of.
And the reason I ask you that, because on the criminal side, obviously it's the divorce rate is high for criminals too. If the criminal marries somebody that is not a criminal,
Sure.
uh, and with me, it was putting criminal activity in front of the relationship. That came first.
Sure.
That was my addiction. That was the most important thing to me, and I chose that every day over top of a relationship. And I was wondering if law enforcement was much similar to that. I'm a cop. That's what I do.
Mhm.
I'm going out doing good, protecting people, and that becomes your thing after a while.
It is. It's your identity. I mean, that's the realities. Military is the same way. I mean, and they have the same kind of things and issues and whatnot. With when they get deployed. That
Right.
that kind of thing. So, I think that any kind of a occupation that's that way is always going to become
Right.
problematic for
Right.
relationships.
Well, you've been on the good guy side of cyber about as long as I
Yes,
was
sir.
on the bad guy side of cyber. That's really interesting. And I would ask, I definitely want to talk about this for a while, but so Telegram. What
Mhm.
do you think about Telegram these days?
Well, I think Telegram has become the favored mode methodology for cyber criminals in general to do everything, or to do a lot of the things that they used to do on the dark web, to communicate with each other, all that kind of stuff. They've set
Right.
up groups there. I mean, you know the deal. They've set up groups. They've set up different, things so that they can advertise their services or what something they're selling, coordinating different types of activities, bringing together like-minded folks
Right.
to do stuff.
Yeah, I was. It's interesting. I'm on Telegram about every day, and I'm there under Brett Johnson. So a lot of people know who I am, and most of the channels are okay with it. They figure, hey, at least we know he's here instead of here under some assumed name. But one of the channels that got shot over to me 2 days ago was a channel that sells skimmers, and I'm gonna make a short video of it and put it out next couple of days on social media. But it really got me how well refined some of these channels have become. For example, when I ran Shadow Crew, we had people who sold skimmers, and those skimmers ran about $5,000 is what they ran. Then you'd have to, you get a camera, keypad overlay, what have you, and you'd set it up and go from there. But back then, we didn't have the, I guess you'd say, the marketing expertise that these guys have today. For example, the channels that I was seeing, they've got they show exactly how the skimmer is installed, the ease of which it's installed, how they're shipping the product to you, how they stealth ship it to you, how to install the damn thing. They show the different types of skimmers they've got, and that entire channel is just an advertisement for their skimmers. They do gasoline skimmers and they do ATM skimmers, and
Hmm.
I've got to tell you, it's one of the most impressive things that I've seen. They sell these damn things for $2,500 a pop, and the camera is $400 or $500, which includes a really nice setup where you can't even see the cameras in there, or the keypad overlays there as well. If you can't afford the 2,500, that's okay. They've got a partnership where you pay them $1,000. They send you the equipment. Everything's encrypted. You send them the files. They decrypt it and give you half of the dumps that they're capturing from there. And I guess that's one of the big things I've noticed with Telegram, and not only Telegram, but cybercrime as a whole, is that evolution from where I started. And as a criminal, we had to know really every single aspect of every single thing that we were doing. We had to know what the security of the companies were. We had to know how to run drop addresses. We had to know how to launder out money. We had to know this, and this all the way down the line. And these days, it's not like that. These days, it's off-the-shelf products, tools, services. You've got tutorials. You've got classes that you can take. You've got people that will walk you through it, that will partner with you to teach you how to do it and profit with you at the same time. Mm-hmm. And what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that, like you said, it's an evolutionary process. I think that, back in the old days, there was not that, cybercrime, if you will, was not certainly what it is today. The ability for communication and encrypted communication where they feel safe, right, where they can talk about these things, certainly wasn't there. So you didn't really have the ability for them to proliferate the way that they can today. I mean, now today you have the ability in an instant to be broadcasting even your show here globally. Right. And it's the same thing there. They're able to market now globally, and like you said, they've refined their capabilities, they package themselves as a specialist in whatever X. I'm specialist in creating a skimmer, right. And then he gets with one of his friends who's a marketing guy, and they create a video, and then next thing you know, you've got this really slick looking video that gives you this whole complete tutorial and the whole deal. And then the other, the marketing or some other guy says, you know what, I'll finance this if these people are just starting out, right, if I get half of the revenue stream. I mean, they're not inventing anything. They're right, looking at what does AT&T do when they give you a new iPhone? They do the same exact thing. So they're just looking at what is done in the non-criminal world, and they're creating the application within the criminal environment.
So where does it stop? I mean, we've seen that evolution to where now you don't have to be a sophisticated criminal or even understand the dynamics of the crime. We've seen that. We're at the point where we have cybercrime or fraud as a service. Certainly, we're not through growing. Things are not through evolving. So where the hell does this end up at?
I don't think it ever ends. I just think this is crime has been around since mankind began. I mean, people were stealing, people were fighting, people were doing things that were that they weren't supposed to be doing. Right. And this is just the next evolutionary step in that. We are becoming more and more digital, more and more cyber enabled, if you will, and as such, what I would call more classical or traditional types of crimes are merging into this area and merging with those cyber enabled or cyber capabilities, and I think that's where things are going to continue to go.
No, I would not disagree. I would not. I was reading on and I made a few posts about it, the MGM attack. Mm-hmm. I hesitate to call it an attack. I certainly don't want to call it a hack when it involved LinkedIn and a phone call. But, it goes into this idea that 90% plus of every single attack uses known exploits. It's not the stuff that we don't know about. It's the stuff that we do know about. Typically the shit we've been told about for years that we're not doing anything about that creates that threat landscape. And you've been doing this stuff a while. Do you think, what does it take? I don't even want to ask you if you think that. What does it take to convince organizations and individuals to enact those proper security measures that people have been preaching about for decades?
Well, I think that it takes accountability. So far, I mean, let's just go back to 2008 when we had the recession and that whole reset with the
Right.
banks and all that kind of stuff. Not too many of those folks were even held accountable for the shenanigans that went on that caused that situation. We don't really hold high up people, high up folks accountable. It just seems to be, something that we do. I mean, look at everything that's even going on, at the executive level in the United States government currently. You
Right.
know, um, so that shouldn't be too surprising. Okay, and because of that reason, those executives in those companies and even in governmental agencies are, they seem to be getting a pass on a lot of this stuff that is occurring on their watch.
Right.
And they're the ones that are saying no, I'm not going to make that kind of expenditure, and prioritizing uh, things within the organizational structure that may not be, in the best interest overall for that for the cyber health of the company. And a lot of the stuff, like you said, is stuff that's out there, that's known, that's very easily remedied. Even something, I mean, we both are familiar with that situation there with the MGM, and
Right.
the reality of that is that probably would have been alleviated with appropriate training or
Right.
retraining.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, um, I was at a cyber exercise today, and it's actually still ongoing.
Okay.
One of the things that we were discussing, one of the questions that came up was, how often are your folks trained? How often are your folks trained?
And what was the
So,
answer?
well, we have we I mean we do, and we train annually.
Okay.
So my folks get annually. Now there's some that are getting even more often than that, which was surprising to me. Um, I was talking with some of our federal partners, and they get once a month.
Okay.
They're getting it. So those people are more. The more training that you have, the less likely you are to fall victim to this
Right.
kind of stupidity that would result in that kind of thing. So the bottom line, and just for the, I certainly, I don't make those kinds of decisions as far as frequency of training and that kind of stuff. But um, the bottom line is that until it becomes a priority for the decision makers, and I think that has to come from, through accountability. You're going to just see the same kinds of things. You're going to see, drips and drabs, and
Right.
some folks that have a little bit better resources, like the federal government, like maybe a large, organization or governmental agency that have those resources and capabilities to provide, that level. Those are going to be the ones that are going to be maybe a little bit less likely to get taken advantage of versus some of these others.
And you were talking about accountability, and this is another one of these things that I ponder a lot. And I'll grant you, hey, if you look at the government, I don't really care which political wing you look at. We're not getting much, modeling, positive modeling that we should be following. We're getting arguments, we're getting the fringe that's coming in, infecting both wings, everything else. And it was, I mean, ideally, we have a government that is there that shows the right way to do things, and it trickles down. All right. But we don't have that. So if it's not trickling down, that positive, basically role model, where do we get that? I mean, I'm at a situation right now. I was talking to Paul Eckloff, and we mentioned that pre-recording that, you know, a lot of the time these days, a lot of this fraud that's going on is kind of accepted by a lot of society. You know, they look at pandemic, they look at the unemployment fraud that took place, and they're like, you know, hey, yeah, get yours. And they don't realize that, hey, you can say that, but the victims at the end of the day are you, because you've got to repay all of those stolen losses. The government's not repaying that. They're just going to raise taxes, and you're going to repay that at the end of the day. So how do we get that type of role model, or that psyche shift that comes in and says, hey, this is wrong. Not only that, but it's not terribly difficult to mitigate a lot of the fraud and the crime that's out there if we just do what we need to do, instead of, you know, having apathy, not caring, passing the buck on to somebody else, and what have you.
Well, I think that there's already strides being made in this area. I mentioned today that I was, earlier that I was involved in this training exercise,
Yes,
and
sir.
the training exercise was put on by other governmental agencies, and those other governmental agencies are constantly out there evangelizing the need for security, and they're trying to facilitate the use of different tools, and providing those tools for uh, companies and or governmental agencies that may not have the resources to be able to do these kinds of things. Um, so I think that there's a recognition of that particular thing, and I can tell you that I am pretty heavily involved in doing that, in the public safety space.
Okay.
um, and I can tell you that many of the people that I encounter in the public safety space, their biggest thing is they don't have the resources and the things that they need to be able to do some of this stuff. I mean, I'm talking about, there's a police department with three guys, a chief of police and two officers, and they're running their stuff off of their personal cell phone on AT&T.
Right.
So how do you tell that guy who's doing everything that he can just to get by and provide a basic service to the folks that he lives, his community, that he needs to be better with cybersecurity, because he's got to protect the data, and all this kind of stuff. So there's not a that's a nut that needs to be cracked,
Right.
as far as that goes. And I don't, I mean, I have my own thoughts as far as that goes, but until something happens, I don't see a whole lot of headway being made in that particular area, or in that particular space. But there are people, I will say, there are people that are aware, and they do have conversations, because I'm involved in a lot of those conversations about this particular situation.
Yes, sir.
Now, it's a whole other animal when you have somebody like MGM, or these larger organizations that do have the resources, and that just did not do what they were supposed to do.
Right.
That's a
Right.
completely different animal. And my personal opinion is that there should be accountability
I
within that
agree.
organizational
I agree.
structure. I mean, if you're telling me the one man band, he had his data taken or something, well, I get it. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? But somebody like one of these people here, come on.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I mean, I truly do. When I was breaking the law, I really did not give a damn about my victims. All right. Didn't care. Um, that 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 bothers me to say it, but that's just the bald-faced truth right there. I didn't care about my victims, and today I'm very fortunate that that I get to talk and consult to a lot of victims, and I imagine that you encounter a great deal of victims from these internet crimes as well. Yes.
Of course.
Would you like to talk about that a little bit? Because here's my thing. I'm a firm believer, and I've talked about this before. I'm a firm believer that it is never the victim's fault that crime is perpetrated upon them. It's always the criminal's fault. It's an active choice on the criminal's part each step of the way. I mean, I truly believe that. I've had some arguments about that because people point out, well, what about if they use the same password? And my thing is I don't really give a damn if they use the same password. It's still the choice of the criminal to act on that information. And I just like to get your feedback on some of that, and maybe talk about some of these victims that you've dealt with, because I've talked to people that I talked to one guy. His name's Randy. I won't say his last name, but his mom lost her house to this romance scheme, and lost. She was just on Social Security. Lost her entire house to this romance scheme. I talked to another lady that ended up sending $1.1 million to a fraudster. She got to the point that she was completely broke. She borrows $200K from her dad to send to this fraudster. So, and it's not just these high dollar things. It's not. I'm friends with Eric Hunley. He's talked about it on his show now, so I can say that. But Eric Hunley gets ripped off for $2,000, $2,000 on a crypto scheme. And he reached out to me, and I thought, hey, yeah, we can, because he knew where the money was. It was in a Coinbase account. And he reached out to me, and I was like, well, yeah, man, I know all kinds of people that can help. And the truth of the matter is that he was not important enough. The dollar amount was not high enough for anybody to really look at it. And if you could just talk about some of these victims for a minute and give your opinion on that, I'd appreciate it.
Well, going back to the times, you were talking about when you were victimizing people
Yes,
and that kind of stuff. And, back in those times, for the most part, people that were involved with these kinds of frauds and the cyber fraud, or it was a lot of that stuff was what had been classified as white collar stuff, because the reality of the situation at the time was that who were the victims? The victims are the banks. The banks are going to write off the monies. Is it impactful to society? I mean, that's where things get gray, questionable. I also know that you were involved in some identity thefts and that kind of stuff. And again, that's to facilitate, credit card, fraud. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass for the victims.
I got to be honest with you, George. I got to be honest with you. I was a complete asshole. I mean, I would hit banks, I would hit corporations, but I'd hit people too, man. I mean,
I'm not minimizing, the
right.
things that you did. I don't want you to take what I'm saying the wrong way. I'm just talking about the evolution of what we got going on today. Okay. So that was the precursor stuff. And you were involved in that stuff, at that time.
Right.
Again, we were talking about how this crime has matured and evolved. Now it is much more personal to the individual now. And like I said before, the people that were taking the losses were the banks for the most part. Today, that's not the case. Today, now, they're going after the individuals, and they're doing it, like you said, the romance scam is a big one. Another big one is the stuff with the grandparents, where they think that the grandkid has been abducted or something is going on, and they need so much money. There are, as I'm sure that I'm not telling you stuff that you don't know. I mean, this is a money making enterprise,
right,
for some state actors. This is as well as just a state sanctioned, if you will, business in some places where you'll have folks that will go to work in a office building, just like I come to work in my office building. And instead of sitting down at their desk and doing something what we would classify as productive, they're luring little old ladies and other folks with all these different kinds of scams, investment scams, figuring out all these different things, how to get people to give them willingly, because that's the big thing. They're willingly giving them their life savings and their monies. And see, then that's the thing, because because they are willingly going to these financial institutions and withdrawing that money or sending that money to these guys. There is no recourse. There is no ability for them to say, "Oh, the bank, it's like, it's not a credit card. They're dealing in cash, and they're the ones that are initiating the thing." And that's the big difference and the big change that we've seen. And the other aspect of that is they're not using like a wire transfer or what I would classify as a more fiat banking type of transaction. They're now taking that and being instructed to transfer that money into cryptocurrency, and then send that cryptocurrency to wherever these people are or whatever they're doing, and that kind of thing. And that it makes it that much more difficult to to obtain any information and ultimately recover assets for the victims. So you said something else though, which resonated with me as well, was the fact that your friend had $2,000 taken from. Two things with that. $2,000 maybe to most people is not a tremendous amount of money. I mean, it's a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but it's not a tremendous amount of money. But you get to grandma who's on Social Security, $2,000 can be half a year's discretionary funds, or so it can be that much more. And what my point is 2,000 to her might be what 20,000 is to somebody else, or 2 million. You know what I'm saying? So just because it's not 2 million doesn't mean that they should not receive services. So that was again another one of the reasons that we kind of got into this game, because the feds, in all honesty, are completely overwhelmed. And it's not their fault. It's just that the way that the laws are written is that it's the feds are the ones that have to deal with stuff that's interstate or international types of crimes. So that was why we created what we created here with us. Everybody in my unit here is all, in my bureau, I should say, we're all dual sworn. So we have the ability to enforce, obviously, state, local, Florida statutes, but we can also enforce federal statutes, because we're sworn, federal officers as well.
I mean, that's a damn nice thing to have right there.
Of course, because more often than not, as these things traverse state lines and certainly international boundaries as well, especially with the larger organizations. So we are we're able to provide that force multiplier, bring all the folks that are here and able and to conduct these investigations, where, like I said, the feds don't have that capability as far as manpower is concerned. And now we can do those investigations, and we can try to assist in the recovery of these assets for these folks.
Are you finding that you talked about manpower, ability, things like that? A lot of private industry has stepped up their game as far as using analytics to track some of these crimes that's going on. And I'm thinking about those people, those companies that track, say, the Bitcoin blockchain to see where the currency goes. Are you finding that a lot of these private companies are more helpful with law enforcement as far as handing over some of the data that might be needed to further these prosecutions, or not?
Quite honestly, they're not. More often than not, they're not. They're
Okay.
the information that they're giving is stale. Um, uh, I mean, in this kind of game, especially once uh, money has been converted into a cryptocurrency asset, time is absolutely of the essence.
Right.
Because there's very few um, um, cryptocurrency um, providers or exchanges that are helpful to law enforcement. Cryptocurrency, and this is my opinion. Was created for crime and to facilitate criminal activity.
I mean, I agree with
Um,
that 100%.
um, and just the nature of it and the way the transactions are, and it's a very, very complicated and difficult process to try and track these these transactions, and um, you have to be very, very skilled and very, very highly trained in order to be successful in doing these things. And then, you know, when again, not to fault the federal government, but they have to say, this is the bar, because there's so many people that are victimized here. We can't do an investigation for less than 10 million, 25 million. These are the numbers that are bandied about, as far as getting the attention of somebody like, the feds. Obviously our threshold is way lower. We will get involved with and we'll assist with. I mean, we'll assist with $2,000
Right. Right.
if we have one of our constituents come forward and say, hey, we were victimized here. We're gonna get on it, and we're gonna see how we can help. I have had folks reach out to us from all over the country because they know, they hear in a talk or something that I've done that we have jurisdiction. We
Right.
can do the federal thing. And they ask for help because their local agency has no knowledge or capability, or they've gone to the feds and the feds are not responsive, and this kind of thing. And I can't help the entire United States. You know what I'm saying? So I have to, in some cases, tell them I'm sorry, or we have to find a nexus to, Florida or here in Miami-Dade County. And then if we can do something like that, then I'll have my folks take a look at it. But
Sure. Sure.
it's sad, but it's it's the reality, because
No,
there's
I
just so
get it.
much stuff going on.
It's you had alluded to some of those state actors, and just so the audience knows, I mean, North Korea finances up to a third of their nuclear program through cybercrime. If cybercrime were a country today, it would have the third largest economy on the planet. And this is what law enforcement deals with every day. Not only nation state actors, but millions of cyber criminals across the planet, across jurisdictions, in countries that sometimes are not very friendly with United States law enforcement. That's what we have to deal with, and it becomes very complicated. And my hat's off to you. Truly, you have nothing but my respect for the job that you're doing over there. I think it's outstanding. I really do.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
I
And I
wanted to
and
ask.
I
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I did want to ask. I know we're running a little bit long. I wanted to ask two
That's
other
all right.
things.
Sure.
When we talked on the phone, and it blew my
Mhm.
mind because I didn't realize it, but you talked about, you mentioned how some of these drug deals, used to, when you went and bought, like I referred to my dad in the 1980s, they had the tables of cash, but it's not like that now. Now you've got the drug trade going on, and they're simply handing over maybe a thumb drive or sending, a Bitcoin wallet address or what have you like that. And that seems to me that changes the game completely at that point.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we have not had a cash seizure of any significance in probably 10 years.
10 years.
There was a migration from there was a migration uh, from cash over to uh, you know gift cards and
Right.
you know what are those
The prepaid
the
debits
Visa
and all
gift,
that.
the Visa
Right, right,
card,
right.
yeah, all that kind of stuff, and they were sending bricks of those, for instead of cash.
Right.
um, and that kind of was smart because it made things a little bit more difficult, but and it was easier to transport and that kind of thing. But very quickly we caught on that they were migrating to a new methodology.
Right.
um, and now it's migrated again to the cryptocurrency game because uh, I mean, think about it. A mule, cash mule, in the old days, they would strap literally with duct tape cash onto their bodies, and then
Right.
they would get onto an airplane and they would travel to wherever they were going. And then they would, on the other end, they would be met by the handler and then they would remove the cash and that was that. Now, and there's a limit to what one individual could transport,
Right.
and a lot of times they'd get flagged at an airport or something, and then they would lose that cash. Now, all they got to do is just grab a thumb drive, like you said, and you could put however many millions of dollars you want on that thing, and they get on the airplane, even if you even need to,
Right.
um, but if you want to send it, over the network, then you're introducing some methodology of somebody is looking at or monitoring, maybe large transactions, that might raise an eyebrow, because there are capabilities with respect to that kind of stuff. But
Right.
but you could put however much you want on a thumb drive, stick it in your pocket, get on an airplane, or even put it in a FedEx
Right.
and send it to wherever you wanted it to go, and no one's going to bat an eyeball at that. And then that person has that stuff, and they can just plug it in, and they can start to use that cash, put that cash into an exchange and start to draw off of that wallet.
Right.
So there's been a significant shift and change into the ways and methodologies that these folks are dealing with payments and transference of cash and
And
monies.
I also thank you for answering that, because I absolutely think that's I mean that's some shit right there. Excuse my language. I mean that's
Mhm.
from a criminal point of view, that's really doing things. I mean, it really is. You save time, effort, money. You're far safer at the end of the day. I mean, it is an outstanding way to do things from a criminal point of view. Um,
Sure.
when I was running Shadow Group, the Ukrainians that I dealt with, the English speakers that I dealt with, people in Europe and things like that, we were typically, we were just geeks, criminal geeks, but we were geeks. It wasn't until the last days of Shadow Crew that we started to see violence coming into that type of environment. And I'm wondering, I have a theory, it's just a theory, that violence has increased over the years because you've got different demographics of people that are coming in. The drug trade is kind of intertwined with fraud in a lot of these marketplaces and things like that. And I'm wondering, from the law enforcement side, have you seen that increase in violence? Is that just some sort of wonky theory that I've got, or is that something that's actually happening?
No, it's as I've said, traditional types of crimes are becoming more intertwined within in the cyber realm. So the drug trafficking trade, though it still exists and will always exist, cyber enabling a lot of stuff, even
Right.
with the monies and that kind of thing. So they're always going to be, very, very violent, if you will. But some of the things that we have noticed is where you have some of these, street level gangs that in the past, they were kind of relegated to, street level narcotics dealing, prostitution, normal, what I would say normal classical type of street crimes,
Right.
and violence. There was a lot of violence in those groups, and they're now recognizing how easy and it is to get into the cyber crime, cyber fraud, PPP fraud, these kinds of things, and how lucrative it is, and how easy it is, and how safe it is. It's safe on a lot of different levels. If you get arrested and charged, you know, for that kind of a crime, you're looking at, again, white collar stuff. So
Right.
you're not looking at a whole, person's crime, significant time. Um, and secondly, when you're dealing with that type of stuff, your personal exposure is not as great either to law enforcement, because they for the most part don't really know what they're doing. They don't know what they don't know. And secondly, the bad guys that you're dealing with are not the same caliber of bad guy that you were associating with before, so that your likelihood of getting shot or something like that has diminished. Now, what I can say is as that has proliferated, you're starting to have turf wars and things within these different gangs, and like maybe gang A, has their territory over here, and gang B is over here, and gang A put some skimmers into gang B's area. Well, that's a problem. It's almost like you have a dealer, and the dealer comes over into your territory. You're going to retaliate, and you're going to deal with that.
Right.
So some of those kinds of things are also starting to happen. So yes, I think that you have two kinds of things that are working in that same space.
Yes, sir. And final question, we're going to close things out. Final question. I asked Andrew Hayden this a few weeks ago. I'm going to ask you the same thing. How does AI affect, or how do criminals benefit from AI, and how are they going to benefit from it?
Well, specifically, my thoughts on this particular thing.
I
I
do.
mean, I have spoken all over the world on this particular topic. Um, we have seen some instances where bad guys have gotten involved with creation of some types of deep fakes, and used those deep fakes for extortion. Fortunately, it was when the technology was much more. It had not evolved to the degree that it is now,
Right.
so it was relatively simple for us to be able to debunk it. Now it's much, much better, which is, of course, makes it that much more difficult for us to do so. But we are staying on top of all the methods and means to do that. But again, I see this area as a pivot for bad guys, because this is going to be a facilitator, in my opinion, and it's going to make it a force multiplier for them as well, for bad guys.
Right.
Because now you can, just as we all have seen with these different generative AI models, you can ask it to write you an essay, or ask you to write you a proposal for this, or to do whatever it is that you need it to do in furtherance of your business or your occupation. And people are using it all the time. We see in medicine. They're using it to identify cancers and different things that they weren't able to before, because it's able to go into massive amounts of data and make associations and identify patterns and different things that it could not, human being could not do.
Right.
So all we got to do is step back at it and say, okay, let's put our bad guy hat on and say, how is it that this stuff could facilitate, a bad actor? And it's not a stretch. We've already started to see some instances where some of these emails that are being used for phishing and that kind of stuff very clearly are being constructed a lot more carefully, and they're more, I don't want to say professional, which is like what you would expect from a CEO or from somebody within a high up within a company, with instructions that are not with misspellings or cryptic or 3-letter words and this kind of stuff, which is what we've seen in the past, and people still fell for those.
Right.
So now, with this capability, like I said, we're starting to see this stuff. It makes it that much more credible and believable. And I just see this continuing, and to be more, as we've discussed this entire time, with the evolution of technology and the use of technology in criminal activities. I just see it's going to continue on that arc and that trajectory, and it's going to get woven more into day-to-day criminal use.
I mean, I would absolutely agree. I truly would. George Perera, cybercrime investigator extraordinaire, Miami-Dade. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure, sir. Anytime.
Any advice as we close things out? Any advice for companies or individuals out there before we go away for the day?
Well, the thing that I usually close with when I'm giving a talk is I tell people that, you get these emails, you get these different kinds of stuff that come in, and if somebody's telling you to do something, double check it, and double check it in a way that is valid, not in something that's inside of whatever that thing is. And when I'm saying that, I'm saying, let's say you got an email and the email says, call me or email me back. No, you're calling that person off of your phone on a phone number that is a trusted phone number for that individual to validate that instruction that person's doing. If we start doing that kind of thing, that's going to cut down on quite a bit of stuff.
All right, so that was episode 90 of The Brett Johnson Show. If you like it, take a second, hit that subscribe button. That's right, just press that little subscribe button. If you don't like it, press it twice. That way, you can hear more stuff that you don't like. You maybe want to bitch to me about it in the comment section, or shoot me an email if you can find the email. Shoot me an email. Let me know what you like about the show. Let me know what you don't like about the show. If you got any guests that you would like me to bring on, just shoot it over. Leave it in the comment section. I read all the comments. I respond to most of the comments, unless you're an ass, and then I'll probably respond to those as well. I'm Brett Johnson. We're going to close out the show. How do we close it out? We close it out the exact same way every single day. Stay safe out there. Stay secure. Stay vigilant. More importantly, understand that this is the Brett Johnson Show. At the end of the day, just do the right damn thing. I'm Brett Johnson. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.